Hello, teachers, administrators, writing and reading coaches, as well as homeschool parents that are working with your students to get them prepared for that state writing assessment. My name is Katie Jackson, and I'm the Director of Curriculum here at Top Score Writing. I've been talking to so many schools lately that have the same concerns and struggles. So at this point in the year in January, I wanted to create a mini PD to help everybody with these concerns because I know a lot of them are very similar. We kind of need to know where we're going to go at this point of the year in order to help our students and prepare our students for that state assessment that takes place in the spring. If you are in the state of Florida, I know that your testing window is between March 31st and April 11th. However, if you are nationwide, most likely your state assessment is around the same time. So usually it's April and May that those state assessments come around, and we have to make sure that our students are fully prepared for that state assessment. So it is January right now, and we have to have an action plan put in place to make sure that those students are ready to go. So I have created a mini PD on what to do leading up to your state writing assessment. So let's get into it right now. Like I stated previously, my name is Katie Jackson and I am the Director of Curriculum here at Top Score Writing. You can contact me anytime. My email is katie@topscorewriting.com. I can get on a mini PD with you or a PLC meeting, or if you needed just some time with me to answer questions, you can fully get a hold of me at my email and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So please keep that in mind. Please take my email address so that you can contact me if you have any further questions. So our agenda today. So we're going to be talking about what's working and what's a concern. Let's be real here. Let's start to think about what is working with our students within our classrooms, what strategies are working, how are we getting through all of those lessons and making sure our students are prepared, and then what is a concern? What's not working? What are some strategies that are a problem? What's taking too long? Because we don't have enough time right now. We got to make sure that we're kind of doing a crash course because we only have about 40 to 50 school days until you actually take that state assessment. So let's kind of start thinking about what's working and what's a concern. I want to focus on the do's and don'ts, what you should do in your classroom and what you should not be doing, and then important reminders. I also want to review our accelerated pacing guide. So we have created accelerated pacing guides that go hand in hand with our boot camp program. Keep in mind, our boot camp program is just our digital curriculum. We just give you an accelerated pacing guide so that you can go to those most important lessons and make sure your students are prepared by state assessment time. So it's kind of like our boot camp is a crash course of those important lessons in order to make sure our kids are ready for that state assessment in a couple of weeks. So we're going to look at our accelerated pacing guides. We're going to cross off lessons and skills that our students have mastered. And then I want you to make sure that you're underlining lessons and skills your students need extra practice with. So we're going to make sure that we get those accelerated pacing guides. And if you do not have those, you can email me personally at katie@topscorewriting.com and make sure that you can get those accelerated pacing guides so that you can use those along with the information that we're going to go over today. So some resources before we go on. Keep in mind we have state-specific pages. Now we don't have a state-specific page for every single state, but these are the ones that we do have a state-specific page for. So Florida, New Mexico, West Virginia, Georgia, Arizona, Ohio, Mississippi, Missouri, Nevada, Indiana, and West Virginia. So if you wanted to check out your state-specific page, you would go to topscorewriting.com / and then the state that you are in. You're going to see information in there about your state assessment, rubrics, sample papers. There are webinars on there. So things that are specific to your state test. We also have a link tree. It is linktr.ee, that is correct, / Top Score Writing. So this is just another resource that you can use when you're teaching within the classroom. Let's say it's a Friday, you're tired, you don't want to be doing your regular lesson that day, but you still want to practice that skill that you've been teaching. So let's say your skill that you've been teaching is conclusion paragraph. You can go to our link tree and check to see if there is some other resource that goes along with conclusion paragraph that's different from the lesson that you would be teaching in the classroom from our books or our digital license. So the link tree is just some extra resource that helps you to have some differences and a variety within your classroom activities. We also have a Facebook teacher support group. This is our Top Score Writing VIP teacher group. Please join that group. There are thousands of teachers nationwide that have joined that group. So if you have a question, you can always post it on there. I'm sure that somebody on there will answer it. Because like I said, there are lots of teachers using Top Score Writing that have joined that group. We also have something brand new that we have been asked for a long time. It is about a month and a half, 2 months old. It is a practice testing platform. So it is www.tswtest.com. This platform allows students to upload passages digitally to the left-hand side of the screen. On the right-hand side of the screen, they are then able to type their essay. So this allows students to have practice using pretty much a very similar, almost the same testing platform that they would have on the real test. So once they are able to type their essay and it's completed, they're able to download it to their computer and then send you it through email or a Google Classroom. So we'll get back into tswtest.com, but it's really important that you have that web page, that website, so that you can go ahead and check it out and then have your students get on there to practice typing their essays and then sending them to you. So Top Score Writing. Between August, maybe September if you're in another state, most states are starting at the end of August right now. So August 2024 to December 2024. What have you been seeing has been working in your classroom? Keep it real. I want to make sure that you're thinking about what's working in your classroom with your students. Now, I've been talking, like I said, to a lot of schools, and these are some of the trends that I'm hearing. I'm hearing that students already know their transition words. So they have their transitions. They may have written them on an index card. It's taped to the corner of the desk. That is going to be their transitions forever and ever and ever as they're writing for that teacher. So those transition words are there. They know how to use them in their topic sentences. So transitions have been easy for students. Introductions. This is another one that I've heard a lot of teachers tell me have been pretty easy. They've gotten through introductions. Students know how to write a hook. They're writing their 3 reasons or their 3 topic sentences, keeping in mind it's either one sentence or they're breaking those 3 reasons or topics into a couple of sentences, which is perfectly fine as well. They also are having some sort of closing or wrap-up sentence in that introduction. So those 3 components need to be there for it to be a satisfying or effective introduction. So teachers are telling me students are getting that, they understand it. Another thing that students are doing well with are conclusion paragraphs. So usually students can give that summary sentence and state what they've been talking about throughout their entire essay. They're able to restate their 3 topics or 3 reasons, and then they have some sort of closing thought, feeling sentence. I always call it a fireworks sentence because it has to be something amazing. It can't be just, and that's all about alligators, right? It has to be something awesome. Usually that fireworks closing thought, feeling sentence at the end is the hardest part for students. But overall, conclusion paragraphs have been easy for students based upon what I've been seeing and hearing from teachers nationwide. Another thing that students are doing well with are quotes. So once they understand that they just have to use a citation or a reference, so they're using their title, their author, their page number and paragraph number or source number, pairing it with some sort of EBT, and then copying from the text using quotation marks. So once they understand that, usually they want to do a lot of that. Keep in mind, 1 to 2 quotes per middle paragraph is all we want. But typically, students are doing well with quoting. So that's what is working based upon the trends and based upon the data that I've been hearing from schools all over. So think about what's working in your own classroom. If things are working, you want to continue to use those strategies. You want to continue to move forward with those skills. If your students have mastered a skill, for instance, transitions, would you want to teach at this point in time another lesson on transitions? You wouldn't, right? We want to make sure that we are not wasting our time teaching lessons or reviewing skills that our students have already mastered, because we don't have enough time at this point in the year. So any sort of skill or lesson that your kids already know, we're going to cross those lessons off, okay? What's a concern? So the trends that I've been seeing, own thoughts and ideas have been a concern. So own thoughts and ideas with students, typically they want to give fluff sentences. For instance, alligators are awesome. Alligators are cool. I love alligators. They are so much fun. Those types of sentences are fluff sentences that students believe are own thoughts and ideas that connect to the information from the text. But really, they are just taking up space. That's why we call them fluff sentences. So own thoughts and ideas are difficult. We have to make sure that our own thoughts and ideas are not repetitive, they are not fluff sentences, and that they're teaching the reader something. So that every single own thought or idea has to connect to the evidence from the text. Also, when we talk about own thoughts and ideas, we really want to add those cutesy little personal anecdotes, those little narrative stories that go hand in hand with the evidence that they're using from the text. So that can take some time. So narrative elaboration may need some extra help, some extra review, some extra time or planning in your calendar to make sure that you get through that skill. Another trend in struggling skills would be paraphrasing. We know students, they think that changing the word the in a sentence is paraphrasing. We have to make sure that they're changing the vocabulary, they're changing the structure of the sentence, right? So we have to continue to practice paraphrasing. I always tell teachers, daily review. If you have 5 minutes before a class, or maybe kids are walking into your classroom in the morning, maybe you have some sort of daily paraphrasing practice on your board. Start off with one sentence, maybe you add another sentence a week later, and then maybe you start to paraphrase more than 2 or 3 sentences or a full paragraph where they're paraphrasing. So starting to practice paraphrasing on a daily basis can be very helpful. Planning. Planning has been another concern. Why? Because students are picking either evidence that is not good evidence, or they're picking topics when they're planning that have not much information. So we have to make sure that our students know what the prompt is asking them to write about, and they have to pick evidence that supports what the prompt is asking them and what they're going to be talking about in their essay. So planning is huge. We have to make sure kids know how to plan. You may have to spend some time going back to planning or reviewing planning in your calendars as you plan. So that's one thing as you're planning as a group, that planning for an essay may take some time, and you may need more time with your students on that skill. Reading passages. Does anyone think that reading passages is a concern? Most rubrics are telling students that they have to use multiple sources within their essays. So that means they have to read multiple passages. If I was a teacher at this point, I would make it a rule in my classroom that every single student has to use at least one piece of evidence from every single source that they are given. So if they're given 2 sources, they just have to find evidence from both sources. If they're given 3 or 4 sources, they have to use a piece of evidence from all of the sources they are given. So this makes it very easy to know that students are using multiple sources within their essays. So reading passages may be difficult. We have to make sure that we are getting them through those passages and that they are reading them and getting good evidence to support what they're trying to say. Lastly, and I have this in bold and capitalized letters because this is the one that I've been hearing all the time everywhere I go, and that is time management. Teachers just don't have enough time to do it all. So when we talk about time management, we have to make sure that we are getting to at least 20 to 30 minutes of whole group writing instruction every single day. Now, if you're a middle school teacher, I know that probably is not possible because usually you have a different schedule. I know I see with middle school teachers A and B schedules. I know that middle school teachers usually use our curriculum as a more of a resource and what students need. But if you are a ELA writing teacher, or maybe you teach all subjects, whatever it is, you have to beg, borrow, steal in order to make sure you get that writing time in daily. It is very, very important at this time of the year that you are teaching every single day, or as much as you possibly can based upon your schedule. So 20 to 30 minutes a day is what we would expect for you to be fully preparing your kids for that state assessment. So the do's and don'ts. So teach writing every day for 20 to 30 minutes. Please make sure you're trying to get to it. In my own classroom for years, I was always putting writing off because my reading ELA block I got stuck in what I was doing, and then all of a sudden time ran out and I was like, oh, we never got to writing today. And I kept doing that over and over again. Finally, I was so behind that I had to start setting a timer every single day. And when that timer went off, it was the last 20 minutes of my ELA time. I did writing during that 20 minutes. So I stopped everything I was doing. Didn't matter where I was. I dropped everything, went and started to teach my writing. So please make sure that you're trying to make yourself aware of the time so that you get in 20 to 30 minutes every single day of writing instruction. Use your pacing guides. So you have your original pacing guides. If you have been working with Top Score Writing since the beginning of the school year, back in August, September, and you've been following along with those original pacing guides, continue to use those pacing guides because most likely you're going to still fully be prepared for that state assessment in the spring. So use your pacing guides to help you. If you are behind, we have our accelerated pacing guides. Make sure that you contact me, Katie at topscorewriting.com, and I can send those to you so that you have those accelerated pacing guides. Our accelerated pacing guides have taken our full curriculum and picked out the most important lessons, so about 40 lessons. And we give you the text sets and the lessons to do, and you're just going to follow those, and your kids will be fully prepared for the state assessment in the spring. So whatever pacing guides you're using, if you're on track, you've been using Top Score Writing and you're using the original pacing guides, continue to use those. If you are off track and you are far behind and you need our help, the accelerated pacing guides are what you're going to use at this point in the year. Plan with your colleagues. Please plan with each other. You guys get ideas from each other. So please plan so that everybody's on the same page and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Also, at this time of the year, we start to add some fun writing activities within, our plans to make sure that our kids are staying focused and excited about writing. So plan with your colleagues some fun activities. Maybe you do a boot camp where kids are going from room to room, and each teacher, let's say you're a fourth grade teacher, each fourth grade teacher teaches a skill or reviews a skill or does some sort of a game. And so every single fourth grade class goes to each teacher and learns or reviews that skill. So you could do something like that. You could do a seminar in the cafeteria where all your kids in fourth grade, they go to the cafeteria. You have your admin get on to the announcements and are like, all right, fourth grade students, you have a writing seminar today. Make sure you have your writing materials and head to the cafeteria. And you literally teach your lesson in front of all of the fourth graders in the cafeteria, the same exact lesson that you would be doing in the classroom, and you call it a seminar, and maybe you hand out candy or raffle tickets or an exit ticket or some sort of activity that students are doing all together in the cafeteria, and you're making it something different but still fun for kids. So start to plan those things with your colleagues. Maybe you're doing a glow party where kids are writing with partners with glow sticks, whatever it may be, or with flashlights, or maybe everybody's going out to the field to participate in some sort of writing activity out with, blankets underneath the picnic table, whatever. So make it fun. So plan with your colleagues so that everybody's on the same page. Teach using whole group instruction first. This is huge. So I have been talking with a lot of schools that are telling me that they are so overwhelmed and so far behind because they are teaching small group for every single skill, for every single lesson. So let's say they have 6 small groups. They are teaching introduction paragraph, that same lesson, 6 times in small groups, just doing the same lesson over and over and over for 6 times. You will never get through all of our lessons and skills using this strategy. We've become so obsessed with small groups that we're forgetting that small groups are usually for remediation and review. So when you're introducing a skill and teaching a skill for the first time, you are going to teach 20 to 30 minutes, modeling underneath the document camera, whole group. All right? Once you've taught it whole group, then you can give the guided practice or independent practice or the homework, and you can take one of those activities, have your students do them, and progress monitor in order to get data on who gets it and who is struggling. Then you use that data to pull small groups, because sometimes you may find that with some skills you may not have to pull anybody. Everybody got it with the whole group instruction. Or you may have 2 or 3 kids that need maybe a 5-minute little review. Check over the anchor chart. Oh, just revise what they did. They go back to their desk, they revise it, and they come back to you good to go. So make sure you're teaching whole group instruction first, because if you are doing small group for every single skill and lesson, you will never get through everything that you need to get through, and you will be overwhelmed. And by the time you get back to the first group again, guess what? They're probably going to forget what you taught them 6 days ago when you first taught the first group, because there's 6 groups. So I always tell teachers, please, please, please do whole group instruction first. Progress monitor to check for mastery of that skill, then pull. All right? So progress monitor to get data for small group instruction. Stick to your plans. When you plan, you want to plan backwards. So you're going to pick a time period about 2 to 3 weeks before your actual state assessment, and you're going to star that in your calendar. On that day, you're going to move backwards using your pacing guides in order to make sure that you get through every single lesson skill that you need to get through. So make sure that once you plan backwards and you have those plans in place, then you stick to those plans. All right? Make sure that you stick to those plans, because if not, you're going to find yourself falling behind again. You can't do that at this time of the year. Only choose 1 or 2 activities per lesson to check for mastery of that skill. It's very important to just choose 1 or 2 activities, because you know that you see guided practice, independent practice, homework, games. There's all these things that you can do with your students. However, that can be super overwhelming, and you're not in reality going to get to everything at this point of the year. So in 20 to 30 minutes, I always tell teachers to skim and scan your lesson, highlight what you want to teach using the example underneath your document camera, and then choose 1 or 2 activities where you practice that skill or check for mastery of that skill using progress monitoring tools. Do as much work in a writing notebook. So I have had teachers tell me that they didn't get to their writing lesson because their copies weren't made. All right. That is a problem. So if your copies are not made for you, if you have somebody that's making copies for you, or you didn't get to the copy machine so you skipped your writing lesson because of that, that can be an issue, because if you don't get your copies for a couple of days, you're going to continue to skip your writing lesson. I have been telling teachers that you can totally put the activities on your smartboard and have the students do the work in their notebook. I did that for years in my own classroom. It was super helpful. I had them date their notebook at the top. It gave them some sort of resource to go back and check if they forgot how to do that skill later on. But I had my kids do the work in their notebook, and you can do the same thing without having to make copies. So the biggest thing for copies are your passages, but once you have all of those passages made, most of the time the activities can be done in a notebook. So if that helps you and saves time, make sure you're doing it. Make your copies prior to teaching your lessons. Make sure your students have their passages and you know the passages that they need prior to teaching your lesson. Remember, your passages are in those little boxes at the top of the lesson. And then time your students to create stamina. It's very important that you start to time them. Even if your state assessment is not timed, you do not want your students to be sitting there for 40 minutes writing an introduction paragraph. It's too long, right? Also, when you start to time your students, it creates competition within your classroom. It creates almost a game. So when we start to time our kids, they're more likely to participate because it's fun. So I always did contests with timing. I'd say, all right, you're writing an introduction paragraph today. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. Make sure your introduction paragraph has those 3 components. On your mark, get set, go. And I'd set my timer, one of those old school kitchen timers, and when it got to the end or close to the end, it got faster and my kids knew that it was ending so they could hear that. And then once the timer was off, I said, hands up, and they put their hands up. And then I'd be able to go and check. So it made it a game, it made it competitive, it made it a competition. So start to time your kids. What you don't want to be doing. So don't introduce a skill in small groups. Like I said, you will never get through every single skill and lesson in time at this point of the year. Don't teach a lesson without skimming and scanning first. You have to skim and scan your lesson first, highlight or underline what you want to teach, and use the example from our book to help you as you're underneath the document camera. But you just don't want to just go into your lesson that day not really knowing what you're doing. All right? Don't do every activity in every single lesson. Right now, it's almost impossible to get through every single activity that goes along with every single lesson. If you have 20 minutes to teach your writing lesson that day, do whole group instruction first, and then pick maybe one activity to check for mastery of that skill. Don't waste your time teaching skills your students already know. If your students already know introduction paragraph is taught in section 1, section 2, and section 3. It really doesn't change. So if your kids already know introduction paragraph, I would not waste your time teaching another lesson on that. I would cross that off and work on a skill either that your kids don't know or that they need more review with. Don't make copies of everything, like I said. You don't have to. You can do the work in your notebook. Don't teach without planning. You need an action plan before you take action. Plan with your colleagues. Know what you're doing. Make sure that you know the lessons that you want to get through that week, and make sure that you're ready with those lessons and that you understand how to teach those skills. Don't teach here, there, everywhere. I have been talking to teachers that are telling me that they're going through the book and they're teaching, lesson 6, and then they're going into lesson 26 because it goes kind of hand in hand and tying, and they're all over the place. If I'm confused as an adult, I can only imagine what their students are feeling like. I would stick with the plan. I would stick with your pacing guide, either the original one or your accelerated pacing guide that we've created. So don't be teaching here, there, everywhere. It's really confusing. Mapping out the rest of your school year. You can use your standards and lesson correlation charts and your pacing guides. This is the original one. I'm going to be talking about the accelerated pacing one coming up very shortly. Managing the writing block. Like I said, time management is huge. I want you to be teaching 20 to 30 minutes of whole group instruction every single day if that is possible, or as much as you can throughout your week. So 20 to 30 minutes as much as you can. One lesson per day and 20 to 30 minute writing block, and then putting anything extra to check for mastery of that skill, either during your centers for homework, during your win time, even during announcements. I know my kids in my own classroom would come in my classroom at 7:35 and announcements weren't until 8. So that gave them a good amount of time to work on writing. So that would be some time where they can either practice typing, maybe typing.com, or they're working on a skill or an activity that we worked on the day before that we didn't get to, like the independent practice, something along those lines where they're practicing a skill during that extra time they have before announcements. You also can do more than one day per lesson. Now, I would not do more than 2 days at this point in time, but so 2 days per lesson in your 20 to 30 minute writing block. So we can look at this schedule for writing. So this teacher had 20 to 30 minutes, and on Monday, she taught lesson 11, modeled and guided practice. So she modeled the lesson using her lesson plan, skimmed and scanned it, highlighted what she needed to teach, and used the example underneath her document camera. She then went through the guided practice, practicing that skill with her students. Maybe it was the whole guided practice, maybe it was just a couple questions from the guided practice, but she did something where they practiced that skill on Monday. Then lesson 11, independent practice. So she checked for mastery of that skill from Monday on Tuesday. So she circulated the room, she observed, and she conferenced with kids. Keep in mind, conferencing is not a 20-minute conference. It's literally a 1-minute conference. Hey, I noticed yesterday that you forgot your 3-topic sentence in your introduction paragraph. Look at our anchor chart. Remember, our 3-topic sentence is our second component in our introduction paragraph. Make sure that you state your 3 topics from your plan. Go back to your desk, revise it, come back to me when you're done. That is a conference. So you are doing the independent practice, your kids are doing independent practice, you're circulating, observing, and conferencing with kids, checking their notebooks, checking their work. Wednesday, this teacher did lesson 12, modeled and guided practice, and then Thursday, lesson 12, independent practice, circulated, observed, and conference. On Friday, she had a skill group. So she did a skill group and revision day on Fridays. So she had stations on Fridays. One was a self-assessment and revision station, where students were revising their work that they did Monday through Thursday. She had a teacher-led skill group, so she was pulling those kids that were struggling, that she got data from her progress monitoring. So she had data from Monday through Thursday. She was pulling those kids that were struggling on those skills that she taught Monday through Thursday. And then she had a skill-specific activity. Maybe she had a group of kids that were struggling with conclusion paragraph. And so in order to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, she put them in front of her smart board and she turned on her digital license, the teacher-led video, and she did the video that goes hand in hand with that skill. So these are just some ideas on what you could do, but this was 20 to 30 minutes of writing instruction every single day. It has a mixture of whole group, small group, conferencing, revision. Here's another one. This teacher did lesson 11, modeled and guided practice on Monday. On Tuesday, lesson 11, independent practice, and while her students were doing the independent practice, she was pulling 2 skill groups. Then on Wednesday, lesson 12, didn't need any more time with that. They did it all in one day. Thursday, lesson 13, modeled and guided practice. Friday, lesson 13, independent practice, and 2 skill groups. Once again, this writing block schedule works because there is a mixture of whole group, small group, revision, conferencing, all of that involved with this. So, testing time. If you do not have these on anchor charts, you should get them on anchor charts ASAP. So we have broken down the time for testing. Now, some of you may not be timed at all, but like I said, you may want to start to time them to create stamina and to create competition and fun within your classroom. So this is for 120 minutes, which is 2 hours, which is kind of typical for most states. I know in the state of Florida that 120 minutes is typical. And when I talk to other teachers, that's usually around the same amount of time as well. So for reading, when they're reading their passages, they should be reading 20 to 30 minutes. For planning, they should be planning 10 to 15 minutes. For writing their actual essay, they should be writing 60 to 75 minutes, and then editing is any extra time. We then went a step further and broke down the writing process. So the 60 to 75 minutes, this writing time. So the first paragraph, introduction paragraph, should be 5 to 10 minutes. Then you have your second, third, and fourth paragraph. Those body paragraphs should be 15 to 20 minutes. And then the fifth paragraph, the conclusion paragraph, should be 5 to 10. Mock assessments. You should be doing at least 1 mock assessment the exact same way that you would be doing it on the real test. So students are going to be sitting in the same spot. They're the kids that have IEPs that are going to be pulled by another teacher and going to another room. They should be pulled. They should know the teachers and the classrooms that they're going to so that there's no surprises. So make sure that you do at least 1 mock assessment before your real test. We also want to make sure that we're starting, if you have not done so already, keyboarding skills. Keyboarding is huge because we know that there could possibly be great writers in your classroom that have no concept of keyboarding and they struggle with the actual typing of the essay, which causes them to struggle on the score of their essay. So it's really, really important to start some sort of program. The free programs that we came up with are typing.com. My kids did that and loved it. So typing.com is a free keyboarding program. Typing Club, Type to Learn, Fast Fingers, and Monkey Type, they're all free. Please try to get your students on those programs to help with keyboarding skills. All right, so this is our tswtest.com. Like I told you, Your students can upload their passages on the left-hand side of this website. Now, the way that they get their passages is from you. You have to either send them their passages digitally through email or Google Classroom. Once they download those passages to their computer, they're then able to upload them to the left-hand side of their screen. So they have their passages digitally. They type their essay here on the right-hand side. Once they are done typing their essay, they then download it to their computer and are able to send it back to you either through email or Google Classroom. As you can see, this looks pretty much identical to the testing platform that your state provides them for the real test. All right, we need to teach our students to box and label digitally. Now, they're not going to have those passages in front of them where they're actually going to be able to take their pencil and make a box around that information, right? We want them to be writing down on their plan next to their topics or their reasons the paragraphs that they need to go back to in order to find that information on that topic or reason. So we have to teach them, instead of actually boxing off those paragraphs, to write those paragraphs next to that topic or reason. So in this case, instead of boxing off paragraphs 1 and 2, they're just going to write paragraphs 1 and 2 where they're going to find their information on species. So it's really, really important that we start to practice this. This takes time. I know from own experience that this took a lot of time in my classroom. It took practice. So make sure you start to practice this. What we don't want are for students to read the passages, do none of this, and then as they start to write their essay, read the passages all over again. So when they're reading, they should be writing down notes on their planning page, on their plan, the paragraphs and the numbers of those paragraphs of where they're going to find that information. Utilize your state practice. So you want to check your Department of Education. This is a Florida example. There are practice tests typically in your Department of Education website. So this is the Florida one. You can do the practice tests at fsassessments.org. You're going to select the writing sample, and then you are going to choose the settings. You're going to select the grade level. And then once you've done that, typically you can get your practice test in front of your students and familiarize them with what that state testing platform looks like. Yes, it looks very similar to our TSW test website, that platform, that practice platform. So you can see you have your passages digitally on the left-hand side of the screen, and then on the right-hand side is where you're going to type your essay. Grading correlation chart. We've had a lot of questions about grades and how we score and how we can put grades into our grade book or on a report card. So we have taken our rubrics, our top score writing rubrics, or you can look at your state rubrics depending on how many points you have. In the state of Florida, it's 12 as a perfect score. So we have 11s and 12s. The letter grade would be an A. If you have a proficiency scale for outstanding, satisfactory, needs improvement, unsatisfactory, it would be an O. And then if you have a proficiency scale for exceptional, proficient, approaching, needs development, it would be for exceptional. So you can see that we have the letter grades and then the proficiency scales here to help you with grading. If you have something similar and you're in a different state than Florida, you can use this to kind of come up with your grading correlation chart based upon how many points your state provides. All right, these are our accelerated pacing guides. Now, these are Florida examples. However, nationwide ones are very similar. They may have different numbers as far as what page numbers, but overall they're very similar. So we have taken our lessons and we have taken the most important ones. In this case, this is a 3rd grade boot camp pacing, accelerated pacing guide. So in this case, we have expository writing, argumentative writing, and then options for the last 10 lessons. So 40 lessons, 15 for expository, 15 for argumentative, and then 10 for either narrative or advanced text-based writing. So we give you the text sets that you're going to need for each of those sections and each of those lessons, and then the lessons that you need to do. What I think you should be doing at this point when you get your accelerated pacing guide is to look at those skills that are taught in those lessons and cross off anything you've already taught or that your kids have already mastered. I don't want you to waste any time teaching those skills that they already know. What you may want to do then is to highlight any lessons or skills that your students may need more review, more time with. So you have to use these accelerated pacing guides in order to make sure that you get through everything, but also cross off things your kids don't need and put in that time things that your kids are going to need more review with. So like I said, you have your text sets. It tells you and the lessons that you're going to do, and then option A or option B for third grade in this case. Fourth grade, very similar. Instead, though, we have no options for the Florida one. We have 15 lessons for expository, 15 lessons for argumentative, and then 10 lessons for additional activities and strategies. We've done that because fourth grade is a tested grade level in the state of Florida. Therefore, we want to make sure that you've done all of these lessons in order for those students who are going to be tested. So same thing, your text sets are shared with you as well as the lessons, most important lessons that you need to do for text-based expository, text-based argumentative, and additional activities and strategies. Keep in mind, additional activities and strategies is section 5. Same thing with fifth grade here in the state of Florida, even though if you're nationwide, your fifth grade one is very similar as well. We have taken 15 lessons for text-based expository, 15 text-based argumentative, and 10 additional activities and strategies. So you're going to have 40 lessons once again for fifth grade, and you're given your text sets as well as all of the lessons that you need to do before the state assessment. So you can literally follow this and go lesson by lesson, but most likely you can, if you've been using Top Score Writing and you've been doing this for the first half of the year, you probably can take some of these lessons out and fill up that time with something that you need to review. Keep in mind, you want to make sure that you have at least 2 to 3 weeks to test prep prior to your state assessment. So in reality, we would like more, but 2 to 3 weeks is usually the reality of things when it comes down to getting through everything that we need to get through, all of these lessons, all this whole group instruction, and then having 2 to 3 weeks to test prep, to go back and review, to do some more small groups, to do some fun games, to do a mock assessment right before the actual state assessment. So like I said, your time right now should be spending time with your colleagues, with your calendars open. You are going to plan backwards using your pacing guides, either the original one if you've been following it, or your accelerated pacing guide. You're crossing off any skills lessons your students have mastered already because you're not going to teach those lessons. And you're going to underline or highlight any lessons you have not taught or your students need extra practice with. And you are going to use those accelerated pacing guides and your calendars to plan backwards. So at this time, go ahead, make sure that you're with your colleagues and start to do that. If you need me and you have further questions, you can contact me at katie@topscorewriting.com. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope that this mini PD was beneficial to you. See you later.